Dear learners, welcome to this session. In continuation of our previous lecture, we talk about changing nature of international conflict. I am Dr. G. Uma, working as an assistant professor in the School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. I am the course coordinator for this course. Let us look into the historical forces and their impact in the international conflict. According to Steven Pinker, in his book Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined in the year 2011, he argued that levels of violence around the world have declined. Based on the analysis of levels of violence in different phases of history of humankind, Pinker argues that overall trend has been downwards both in terms of conflicts and resultant violence. Pinker further identifies 5 key trends in historical evolution of human civilization. They are as follows, as quoted in Human Security Report in 2013. First, let us start with pacification process. This is the transition was over 1000 years from hunter-gatherers, horticulture and other early human societies to the first agricultural civilizations and then nation state. These transitions have been associated with dramatic decreases in death rates from both war and homicides. Next is civilization process. From the late Middle Ages to the 20th century, accompanied the growth and consolidation of the nation state system in Europe. During this period, Europe has become more urban, more cosmopolitan, more commercial and secular in nature. Often highly repressive, the civilizing process was associated with declines in homicide rates that ranged from 10-fold to more than 50-fold. Third one is humanitarian revolution. This was started in the 17th and 18th centuries. It was associated with the decline and eventual abolition of slavery, with the slow elimination of judicial and other forms of torture and a long-term reduction in all manner of other cruel and inhuman practices. Next one is long peace. The post-World War II world witnessed the disappearance of great power wars and the considerable reduction in the number of international conflicts. The unprecedented destruction caused by the World War II also strengthened the international norms against war. By the early 1970s, wars of liberation from colonial rule were mostly over, and the idea of new colonial conquest became unacceptable in international community. New peace. The end of Cold War removed the major source of international conflict. The period also witnessed emergence of global security governance, reduction in intrastate conflict, greater impetus to globalization, expansion of democracy around the world, expansion of mass media and greater incentives for cooperation among nations. So, now let us see the patterns of contemporary international conflict. Let us look at the warfare in contemporary international order. Even a cursory glance at the pattern of contemporary international conflicts would reveal that we are moving into an era where large-scale international conflicts or wars are becoming increasingly relevant. The utility of war as a rational instrument of states' policy to gain political objective is being seriously questioned. This was told by Kenneth Booth in 1991. Territorial disputes do exist and they can be cause of interstate armed conflicts. For example, India and Pakistan have long-standing dispute over Jammu Kashmir. India and China also have a dispute over demarcation of borders. However, the interstate conflict in contemporary international order are not restored for the reason that generated such conflicts in the past. In the post-World War international order, there have been a number of developments both at ideological and structural level that have strengthened global norms against war. There have been concerted efforts by the UN and other international agencies toward prevention and management of conflicts. In addition, the imperatives of globalization and the resultant interdependence, expansion of mass media, information technology, emphasis on trade and development have created an environment where armed conflicts and wars are not encouraged. There is a growing realization that economic development, trade and commerce, greater democratization and empowerment of common people have created incentives and structures where peaceful resolutions of conflicts are encouraged. Additionally, the evolving and expanding global security governance, despite all its limitations, has been effective in driving down the number of armed conflicts in contemporary international order. In such a situation, internal conflicts of various types occur, that is low intensity conflict, insurgency, terrorism, revolutionary wars, protracted war, proxy war, etc. These are far more common than interstate war, as Liddell Hart says, quote, "This is the only kind of war that fits the condition of modern age," quoted in Frank Kitson in 1971, page number 16. For external powers, involvement of such conflicts is emerging as the most preferred strategy. While they can be initiated at modest cost, the defending nation has to spend many times more to defend itself and counter it. Plural democracies, multicultural and multilingual societies are more prone to such conflicts because these differences can be used as the most potent factors to be exploited to hurt a country, to break its unity, fragment it, create insurgency, terrorism and other social turbulences. According to Ray Dams L., quote, "By a constant switching of friends and foes and by a breakdown of institutional authorities such as military and the police, responsible for ordering and having recourse to use of force," unquote. In this context, acts of war and criminality became indistinguishable and the war drags on with no prospect of peace accord to end it. Such wars, which had already multiplied in the 1980s and 1990s, look set along with guerrilla terrorist wars to determine the course of violence in the 21st century in many parts of the world. Redams, L.A., Gure, Kame, Ala, Gure. Patterns of armed conflict, humanitarian law, responses and new challenges in the International Review of Red Cross, volume 88, number 864, December 2006. Another shift in the pattern of international conflicts have been in terms of regions affected by them. While the first part of the century was dominated by warfare between rich states, most of the contemporary conflicts takes place overwhelmingly in the world's underdeveloped and poorest countries. These parts of the world witnessed 98% of all international conflicts since 1945. This was written by Martin Witt in 1966, page number 103. According to L. K. J. Holsti, out of 164 armed conflicts between 1945 to 1995, all but 5 were located in the Third World. K. J. Holsti in 1996, he wrote, "Holsti has excluded anti-colonial wars from this data. In one includes these figures, like if somebody has includes the anti-colonial war, the concentration of conflicts would appear to be more alarming. Regions most affected by various forms of armed conflicts are parts of West Asia, Africa and South and Central Asia. Most of these areas are populous and characterized by poor living of economic development, weak states, inability of institutions of governance to address conflicts in society both in terms of conflict prevention, management and resolution, ethnic polarization and religious extremism. Next, let us look into the hybrid warfare. Modern conflicts are rarely categorized as being purely international or purely non-international in character, but rather a mixture of internal and international conflicts taking place in a globalized context involving both state and non-state actors. In some cases, the state is battling rebels who wish to take control of the state or secede from it. In others, there is conflict over control of natural resources or is fueled by extremist ideologies or ethnic conflicts. In reality, modern conflict is often a mixture of all these, that is territoriality, religious ideologies, economic interest, criminal activities, proxy war, foreign intervention, conflict over resources and ethnic polarization. One aspect that is common in all these conflicts are, however, that the enemies and battlefields are not defined. Objectives are often not clear and keep changing, and civilian populations become easy target. The conventional military capability of states remains important, but the hybrid conflicts demand additional requirements from conventional armed forces in terms of their capabilities to deal with such conflicts. They are often found lacking in softer skills like cultural awareness, training, language skills, psychological operations, human intelligence and their interface with local population. Other aspects of conventional capabilities such as air power and missile capabilities play a significant role in conventional conflict. However, to remain relevant and sustainable for contemporary conflict, a radical reassessment in areas of strategy, tactics and intensity becomes necessary. In the absence of a defined battlefield or enemy, innocent civilians often become target, and that only helps the rebel forces in consolidating their positions among civilians. The focus therefore should be to minimize collateral damage and enable the provision of intimate close air support to ground forces. Similarly, the maritime capability of states involved in such conflicts in terms of sea denial and sea control remains essential elements to enforce deterrence on the potential adversary. Operational maneuver from the seas and coercive diplomacy will also form important components of capability development. Information technology and network centricity have transformed methodologies of warfare. Their impact, however, needs to be pragmatically assessed against realist battlefield scenarios. Aerospace capability is a potent dimension of land warfare with vast applicability in all forms of conflict. Insurgent and terrorist activities have added complex politico-military dynamics to the nature of conflict. The contemporary nature of conflict mandates realistic transformation in the conventional force structure, deployment methodologies, support structures and emerging technologies to be able to face the multi-spectrum challenges that would emerge in the future. Now let us see the sub-conventional conflicts and non-state actors. In contemporary conflicts, the non-state actors are increasingly become lethal with access to technology and equipment that previously only conventional state forces could afford to. Almost all contemporary conflicts such as in Syria, where great powers are involved primarily to serve their political interest, Lebanon war in 2006, Russia-Georgia conflict in 2008, Sri Lanka conflict in 2009 and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan clearly indicate growing importance of non-state actors. In almost all the theatres of conflict, non-state actors have cross-border linkage in terms of support structures, source of finance, state support, arms procurement and safe haven. In many of the countries, internal conflicts are often exacerbated and sustained through these cross-border linkages. Though internal factors remain important, many of these movements have grown and are sustained due to their cross-border linkage in terms of state support, financial network, arms supply and ideological affinity with similar groups. Subconventional wars are fought for winning the political loyalty of the people and are people-centric. These wars are always protracted and political outcomes are determined by the staying power reflected in political will and the ability to achieve the desired strategic effect by application of all means. Technology has empowered the individuals and today even the single terrorist or guerrilla can cause severe damage to adversaries through cyber, financial and kinetic attacks which earlier only large organizations and states could do. The dynamics of deterrence and escalatory control are more relevant against non-states. Against non-state actors, these capabilities have little effect. However, several diplomatic, informational, military and socio-economic measures can be effectively used in a contemporary and comprehensive approach to enforce restraint on the activities of non-state actors. Let us see next religious extremism and terrorism. Religious extremism and terrorism has emerged as one of the key patterns of international conflicts. So, based on these two lectures, now I would like to sum up my both lectures. In this both lectures, and when you read unit 2, you must have read and listened the meaning, scope and character of international conflicts which have evolved over the years to incorporate changes in social, political, economic and technological field at the level of international system and their constituent units. In the literature of international relations, the concept has been treated as a very complex subject with divergent definitions and perspectives. Historically, interstate armed conflict or war between two or among states have been considered as dominant form of international conflict. However, in contemporary international system, the pattern of conflict is changing. They are different from wars that took place in early 20th century, primarily in Europe in terms of tactics employed, weapons used, the objectives to be achieved and nature of parties involved in conflicts. Over a period of time, our understanding of conflicts has expanded to include subnationalities, terrorists, insurgents, religious extremism and ethnic interest. This reflects evolution from the first generation of warfare to the fourth generation of warfare. Even a cursory glance at the pattern of contemporary international conflicts would reveal that we are moving into an era where large-scale international conflicts or wars are becoming increasingly irrelevant. On the other hand, internal conflicts of various types occur: low-intensity conflict, insurgency, terrorism, revolutionary war, protracted war, proxy war, etc. These are far more common than interstate war. For these two lectures and this unit, these are the references given by us. If any learner or listener interested to read further, to know further about this topic, you can very well read these books quickly. I want to mention few of the books. First is Barry R. Posen, The Security Dilemma and Ethnic Conflict in Michael E. Brown edited Ethnic Conflict and International Security, published by Princeton University Press 1993. The Decline in Global Violence, Evidence, Explanation, Contestation, Human Security Report 2013, that is Human Security Report Project, Simon Fraser University. Frank Kitson, Low Intensity Operations, Subversion, Insurgency, Peacekeeping, Faber and Faber, London 1971. Like for example, Jet Odermatt, we have given the web link to download the document. And another important reference is K. Subramaniam, Covert Operations Pose New Challenges for Indian Security, World Affairs, Volume 1, Number 4, October-December 1997. K.G. Holsti, International Relations Theory and Domestic War in the Third World, The Limit of Relevance in Stephanie G. Newman edited International Relations Theory and the Third World, Macmillan, London 1998. Like for example, Kenneth Booth, New Thinking About Strategy and International Security, published by HarperCollins, London 1991. Kenneth N. Walls, Theory of International Politics, reading, M.A. Addison, Wesley 1979. Martin von Kriebel, On Future War, London, Braces 1991. Oliver Ramsbotham, Tom Woodhouse and Hugh Meal, Contemporary Conflict Resolution, 2nd edition, Polity, Cambridge 2005. Steven Pinker, Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, Viking Books 2011. Quincy Wright, A Study of War, University of Chicago Press, Chicago 1942. Stephen R. David, The Primary Internal War in Stephanie G. Newman, edited International Relations Theory and the Third World, Macmillan, London 1998. Steven Pinker, Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined, Viking Books in 2011. Jet Odermatt, we have given the web link to download the document. Radam's Patterns of Armed Conflict, Humanitarian Law Response and New Challenges, International Review of Red Cross, Volume 88, Number 864, December 2006. These are the references. If anybody is interested, they can very well go through these references and read more about this topic. So thank you listeners, and thank you our learners for listening this topic. Hope you enjoyed this lecture. We will meet again in the another topic. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much for patiently listening this lecture. Thank you.